Hi, I'm Karim and Dan, CEO of Crowd Favorite, and today I'm really excited to have a conversation with Dan Drapu. He is from DXP Catalyst, and he is one of the leading experts on talking about what's going on with the DXP space and the different content management systems that are out there. Why can't we get the attention of Gartner and other analysts to say, to create a truly composable DXP, uh, start with an open source hub and you really can make it choose your own adventure.
Yeah, so Gardner is just strictly going to report on vendors. So I think it's more up to agencies and consultants to kind of push that direction. Like, here's what's possible with open source, using it potentially as like a hub. It's not all about proprietary vendors, but I don't think Gardner is really going to do that. Just thinking about WordPress, for example, right? It doesn't qualify as a DXP because it doesn't have like the full comprehensive integrated features for a true DXP.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's certainly a challenge with that. Their report has to have like strict criteria, and with their like WordPress's modular nature, and reliance on third-party extensions, it's kind of creates gaps in the ability to deliver the seamless and integrated functionality that you see in other DXPs. When your agency is working with a client who's looking to move off a legacy platform and they're evaluating DXPs like Adobe, Sitecore, Optimizely, how do you factor open source options into that conversation?
Well, it's interesting because it's like you said, they don't think of open source as a platform because it's not in this magic quadrant, so to speak, outside of Acquia. And I think the root of that problem has to do twofold. First of all, WordPress hasn't ever marketed itself that way, besides
Yeah.
WP Engine hosting, VIPN hosting, other, like there is no other marketing organization out there saying, look at WordPress as an alternative. Um, and then secondly, there's never been that comprehensive feeling that you can get enterprise level support that's widely marketed out there. The truth is, Crowd Favorite, and there's many other agencies that do this as well, can provide enterprise level support, service, and innovation around open source. But open source doesn't have the marketing department that a lot of these platforms have, and they don't have, frankly, the the investment in them to be able to spend that kind of marketing. And really, clients should keep that into account when they're looking at these things. The more heavily the platform is invested in, or the more heavily it's an amalgamation of acquisitions, the more risk you have of long term not being able to have a solution that's going to stay with your needs. So, what kind of misconceptions do you see about open source platforms at the enterprise level?
Um, Quite a few of them. It's been kind of some of these topics are recurring themes over the years, but the common misconceptions I see are that it's insecure, it's free, it's not enterprise ready, it's only about cost savings, it lacks support, it can lead to fragmentation. So yeah, I think what's driving these kind of misconceptions is like just legacy perceptions and outdated narratives about, open source. So I think there's really just a lack of awareness and education. And also marketing by proprietary vendors, I don't think helps open source either. There's some misalignment with enterprise culture, and some companies that have been on proprietary platforms, there's some resistance to change. I don't think they would openly approach open source. So that tends to be what I see. I think more of the responsibility is going to fall on consultants and agencies for working with these organizations.
It's interesting you say that because one of the things that really elevated open source and WordPress specifically to our customers was when platforms like WP Engine really started offering enterprise level support on the platform and
Yeah.
partnering with agencies like ours, saying there's an enterprise that's looking for next level support. Let's mimic the sort of the IBM Red Hat experience of the late 90s and early 2000s in making sure that open source doesn't have this hole. We've seen successful examples with some of the largest Fortune 50 clients in the world who have used Crowd Favorite and WP Engine and other vendors to really be able to lock in that.
Mhm.
What's going to be interesting to me is, can open source platform hosts and open source agencies effectively communicate the opportunity to clients that you can create a non-walled garden, that you can truly create a composable area for enterprise success with open source DXPs. That's going to be the challenge of the future, I think.
What are some like real world examples of businesses avoiding vendor lock-in that you've seen?
So on the enterprise side, I can think of the last 10 and 15 years of very difficult migrations from monolithic closed systems that almost felt like they were engineering it in a way that it was almost impossible to get the data out of those systems, from one system to the other, let alone anything else. I think the advantage of using open source as a hub in a DXP is that you control the format of the data, you control how the data is used, and really migrating even from one open source platform as a hub to another is always much more simple than trying to get from one of these closed systems to another. And
Mhm.
that's where I feel these systems have an opportunity to capture the enterprise business in saying, we would welcome working with open source as the hub of the content management system, and let us add our special features and ingredients and modules to your open source hub. There's a real opportunity out there, but I don't know if the DXP vendors are going to see that.
Mhm. I agree with that.
So, Dan, let's talk about the future of DXPs.
Sure.
Uh, if I'm an enterprise buyer, what am I looking to focus on moving forward?
I mean, I think taking aside composability and a lot of the stuff we talked about, AI certainly has a pretty big role, here in content and customer experiences. So, I think a lot of the AI capabilities that we see today, like content tagging, for example, are assistive and not autonomous. I do think it might be a little bit of hype when it comes to like true orchestration of content and customer experience. But that said, I think for certain vendors are on the right track. We'll see at some point if like AI can really dynamically orchestrate experiences across channels and automate decision making and optimize user journeys in real time. I'm really interested in seeing like the development of AI agents within DXPs. I think Salesforce, Adobe, and Optimizely are kind of taking the lead charge on that so far. So I think that'll be kind of interesting to pay attention to.
How are they doing it differently?
In terms of like approaching AI,
Mhm.
I really like Optimizely's approach. They don't necessarily just visualize it as here's a bunch of Gen AI or machine learning driven AI capabilities. It's like they picture it to their customers along a marketer's like journey. So the journey from ideation to creating content to adding assets to optimizing it, they kind of plug in some of like their AI capabilities into each of those areas. And then they have Opal, which is like their AI agent that sits on top of it and works throughout the entire ecosystem, not just like content management, but everything. So that's kind of what I'm seeing there.
Okay. So if we're thinking about enterprise DXP strategies for 2025, give me your top three priorities if an enterprise is evaluating a DXP.
Scalability and cloud native capabilities, um, vendor support and the ecosystem, and composability and modularity. There's a few others I'd want to list. It's kind of hard to really.
I was just asking for the top three just to see which ones you prioritized. I'm glad to see composability was there, but okay,
Yeah.
what are some of the other ones out of curiosity?
Um, AI driven personalization, the ability to integrate with like emerging technology. Um, let's see, data privacy and compliance, analytics for decision making. Um, those are the ones that kind of come to mind.
Well, I'm going to second um, that point you made about quite literally making sure that they can keep up with innovation,
Yeah.
because I think that's where open source has a real leg up over some of these other platforms, because you can keep an agnostic hub and then use best of breed. As we were saying earlier with some of the conversations you're observing with Squiz and the conversations I'm having with Squiz around how to really bring some of their composable pieces back into open source.
Mhm.
I think that is the future. If we can really look at, um, hey, Optimizely is really good over here, and Squiz is really good over there, and um, you know, name other system is good with this other thing. How can we use the best of breed for making a truly composable orchestration layer for our customers experiences, right?
Absolutely. I think there's too many scenarios out there where it's like just closed loop. So the more collaboration and openness to doing that is definitely the future, in my opinion.
And at the risk of basically asking you to plug DXP Catalyst, how do enterprises think about, if they want to think about how to approach a DXP investment? Um, what would you tell them the first steps are?
Well, I think in general, you need to have like a well thought out strategy and ensure that your investment in technology is really aligning with your business objectives, your customer needs, and like already like existing organizational capabilities. It's not just about platform capabilities, it's about how it fits into the company's vision. What's the roadmap for success? I think vendor selection is a big part of the strategy, and the ability to also like measure success. If you're going to make this type of investment, what does that mean? Is it improved time to value? Does it mean you're going to have increased engagement rates? I think those are all kind of factors.
So, Dan, at DXP Catalyst, you're helping enterprise make these decisions. If they're going to go down the road of saying, we need to reevaluate how we're looking at our content, how we're thinking about a DXP investment, where would they start?
So, if a company is considering an investment in DXP, I would typically start, at DXP Catalyst Consulting. What we do is we typically might look at, what their goals are, business objectives, what their vision is, but then more tactically do maybe a Martech ecosystem evaluation, really understand what their current state architecture is. I think some of that is pretty important. In terms of like vendor selection, I think once you kind of have an understanding of what the current state looks like, where there are gaps, and start gathering some requirements and figuring out what are they truly looking for. Is it a DXP or is it more just like CMS and personalization? Like what do they truly need? Once you've identified that, have started gathering requirements and have an understanding of current state, then I think you can do more of like platform evaluation and figure out what the right technology is. So it could be picking just a composable suite, or it could be picking more of a best of breed solution. Again, maybe you don't need something like an Optimizely, but you need open source, or you need a headless CMS solution and personalization or CDP. Figuring out what the right technology is and that fits your needs.
So Dan, DXP Catalyst and Crowd Favorite, we really love working together because both of us have the history of asking our customers, what's your business need, not what's your technology need.
Right.
A lot of engineering companies out there and a lot of DXP platforms start with a feature list or a way to approach the technology, as opposed to how am I trying to fix a problem. What's exciting about some of the work that we've done together is quite literally you, like us, approach the customer from a point of view of how do we solve your business need, not necessarily how do we just implement technology.
Right. Absolutely. That's like the only way to really do it.
So this has been a great conversation, but I'm curious, what are the key insights to watch for in 2025? What do we see coming down the road? And what does DXP Catalyst think needs to come out of the vendor field in DXPs?
I think in 2025, there'll probably be like a reality check on composability. Based on everything we just discussed out of Gardner's report, I think a reality check might be in order there for the majority of businesses. AI's continued shift to practical use cases, and I could see, some like consolidation and like market shakeups a little bit here, as we kind of move forward, getting closer to 2026.
So Dan, before we wrap up, what are your thoughts around vendor agendas versus real business value for 2025?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think enterprises don't adopt digital experience platforms because they want the latest composable architecture or other, features that are marketed. They adopt them to solve real business challenges. So I think too often vendor agendas really drive the conversation, and vendors position their products as the future, whether it's composability, AI, or mock capabilities. It's not always about considering what the businesses actually need. So the first question like enterprises should ask isn't like, is this composable? It's more about, will this help us deliver better experiences, streamline our operations, and drive measurable outcomes? Um, so yeah, I mean, I think as we kind of navigate the evolving landscape within the DXP world, the focus shouldn't be on like just necessarily following vendor roadmaps. It's more about building digital ecosystems that work for businesses, not just the vendor.
Awesome. Great answer. All right. Well, again, thank you again for this great conversation around the 2025 Gartner DXP Magic Quadrant. I'd like to invite everybody to go to DXP Catalyst and subscribe to Dan's newsletter, and follow up with Crowd Favorite on our website for more insights. We look forward to continuing the conversation online. Please feel free to get a hold of either one of us with any questions. Dan, thank you.
Thank you, Karim.